realized I turned Jout's camera off and I didn't even ask you. I'm sorry. Wait. I'm sorry. I did the wrong person. Sorry. Are we live streaming? Of course we are. Please turn back on your camera if you can. Where'd you go? As to start video. I'm so sorry. Okay. You should be able to start it now, Joao. Hi. Do you prefer to go by Kravi? We're obviously starting live, so we fucked up, but we'll just cut this off.
No worries, and yeah, that's perfectly fine.
I'm sorry, I meant to turn off someone else's, but I didn't actually. Do you go by Kravi?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. Okay. And we're going to pretend we're just about to start recording now, even though I already started. Okay, thank you everyone for joining the newest of experiments of Aginext 2021, which is an experiment unto itself because we're trying to become an anti-webinar with the optimal level of inclusion and participation. With that in mind, we have a panel. We have lovely guests in form of Neil, Gwen, Yanis, Kravi, and Fernando. But we also accept questions from the audience. So this panel was the most logical to have as a topic because the whole point of the Aginext community and Aginext is about diving into what advanced Agile means and what post-Agile means. What's very interesting about that is when I asked at the opening ceremonies, as we'll call them, at the warm-up, how long people have been doing Agile for. It was anywhere between 1, but most of the people were 8, 10, 20 years. So we definitely have a more experienced crew up in here. And we have a lot of exciting things to start with. So I would just like everyone, I'll just go around what my square says. So no preference in that way at all. And just if you can give us your elevator pitch of who you are. So Kravi, do you want to start?
Sure. Hi everyone. I'm Kravi. I'm right now product manager. I'm based in Lisbon, Portugal. Working for companies that are somewhat UK based for the past 4 years, and in total, in different competencies, I've been working with Agile for more or less 7 years now, and I'm currently with Farfetch as a senior product manager.
Very cool. Thank you, Fernando.
Hi everyone. Yeah, my name is Fernando. I'm a lean enthusiast. I try to follow Tom and Mary Popendick as much as I can. Coming from IT, yeah, happy to see the future of work and everything, all these changes that are taking place and having a more meaningful work and life.
Certainly everything has accelerated right now. Gwen, please introduce yourself.
Thank you and hello. So compared to some, I'm relatively new to the world of Agile, coming up to my 7th year this year, and I've never really known a pre-Agile world other than a really bad group project we did in university back in the day about waterfall. I started working as a software engineer in 2014. I became a Scrum Master in 2017, and now I go by the title of Agile Team Lead, just as a way to reflect my organization's approach to all Agile frameworks rather than just Scrum as a preference.
Very good. And Neil?
Hi there, I'm Neil Walker. I've been on an Agile journey since '92 when I was a software developer in a rad team for a bank. And my journey has taken me a long way, both in software development, business change, business agility from about the mid-2000s. These days, I'm a consultant, coach, trainer, and I wear many other hats. In the past, I've been software developer, product owner, product manager, practice manager. Oh God, so many hats. You would not. I've had a very agile career, and I didn't start off in IT. I actually started working for a bank and then moved into IT. So yes, I'm looking forward to this. I've seen a lot. I've done a fair amount. I've made a lot of errors, learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to seeing what others have done.
I think we don't call them mistakes or errors. We just call them an agile space moments.
Oh, it's just it's the way of life. That's all it is.
Yeah. And just I'm learning in my Clubhouse learning lately to reset the room since we are on a live feed. For those that are just joining us, this is Aginext 2021, and we are talking about the post-agile world and what that even means. So if you have any questions in the comments of YouTube or for our Aginext participants, I've written questions, but make my life easier and add them in the chat if you would like me to ask any questions. So to begin, what the heck is post-agile? What's next?
Oh, Jennifer, am I wrong? Do we speak to Janice?
Oh my goodness, we skipped Janice. I completely apologize. I am a disaster today. I am so sorry, Janice, go.
It's all right. I think the Clubhouse thing, came about, and that's kind of carried away you. So I'm Yanis. I'm on the Agile journey for the last 7 years now. Also worked in large banks and financial institutions. Beforehand, I have been wearing different weird Agile hats. Currently, I'm a Scrum Master at Fidel API. For those of you who don't know Fidel, we are a real-time transactions data API. So yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. And to you, Yanis, to start, what is post-agile to you? Are we in a post-agile age or what?
I think it's too early to talk about post-agile. I don't think that agile has actually, I think we're only beginning to understand all the benefits of the agile now, especially during the pandemic. And for me, this pandemic and post-pandemic world is going to be even more agile than the world before. So I don't think we're there to talk about something completely different. And agile itself, for me, it's like a mixture, like a cocktail of different things with lean inside and different other theories from 80s, So I think it's really easy to take these things or elements of those things and apply to different parts of our lives. If you really insist on post-agile, I think that the trend will carry on with applying agile in a very creative way and in creative situations in different mediums, and maybe adding new theories, combining those with agile, because agile is like a metamorphosis of different things already.
Metamorphosis, interesting word. Who else would like to add what you think?
I totally agree. I actually call it a cocktail because I prefer that, and I expect Gwen to do the same as she's got a bar behind her or to the left of her. Oh, shall I not say that? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I like to think it was a cocktail, and I think we'll get to, our tastes will change over time. Certainly in the last 30 years, my tastes of cocktails have changed. It's more probably cosmopolitan for me now compared to what I used to drink. But I think more people will embrace more of an agile way of working and realize actually what we've been doing in the last year. Oh, we really like this. We don't know what it's called. Oh, is it agile? Oh, that's some branded thing, isn't it? Because that's the seem to be a myth with certainly lots of leaders is agile. Does it really work for us? It's something that the big consultancies are selling, possibly. I don't know. So yeah, I think it will just continue, and more people will embrace it as a better way of working, and it's more natural way of working.
Yeah, so that brings me to, if anyone else wants to answer, what is agile and what is it not? And is there a difference between agile, DevOps, CI/CD, etc.?
Well, in my opinion, I don't know I think, Jennifer, this video, Agile Tetris. I think you saw it last year. Should I maybe paste it here in the chat or?
Of course, we'll include it in the YouTube channel as well, but please explain now.
So basically, I sometimes make the comparison, to me, Agile is basically the manifesto, okay? And of course, there are profound principles behind, the 12 principles behind, and And you can write huge books about that and spend hours, days, months discussing about it. But I always try to go to the roots. And sometimes I make the comparison, I think I often say, like the famous 10 commandments of some religions, that one of them was don't kill each other. And then there were multiple religions and they ended up killing each other and so on. So I hope this is not what is going to happen to us with Agile. I hope we can still keep the origins and the spirit behind. And the different approaches that we see, like Scrum, Kanban, I even include design thinking, and you were mentioning DevOps, are for me different approaches that are totally based on the same principles. So Agile is very, 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 very small in the statements. It was done by very bright people. If they wanted to write more about that, they could have done it, but they put the 4 values and the 12 principles, and it's up to the rest of us to elaborate on it. And I see more and more things coming. Like I'm pretty much enthusiastic with the 4 weekdays initiative, for example. And this is something that I think only those companies that can measure the results and the value can embrace something like that. Those companies that keep on just focusing on activities and keeping everyone busy without knowing what they are doing, they cannot do that, because of course you can do more activities in 5 days rather than 4. But if you can produce something valuable and meaningful, that's another discussion. And I think this is part of the past and part of the future. And the future is bright. I'm convinced of that.
It's bright. We got to wear shades for them, though. Gwen, I keep seeing you nodding. So like you said, you've been about 8 years in Agile, but it's 20 years old this last month. What about Agile has worked, or what continues not to work? What do you think, Gwen?
So, I mean, yes, compared to, Waterfall, Agile is so young. Waterfall, was around since the 50s in one way or another with regards to working in phases. So, Agile is very much a spring chicken. Where I've seen Agile failing or not working, in my opinion, is at an organizational level. I've seen software teams attempting to be Agile, but swimming against the current of the waterfall organization. And in such situations where you're a small Agile fish swimming in a big waterfall pond, I'm really milking that comparison, but you're always going to be restricted in how Agile you can really be. And an area that I've seen it not working is the sheer popularity of Agile. It's become a buzzword. And the harsh truth is, I think a lot of companies and even industries are throwing the term around without much thought as to what it means and what it is to be Agile or do Agile. And I think that leads to bad press. People start to think that Agile is the problem when it very rarely is. And I think that all of us here, we have a duty to ensure that we do our bit to educate and call this out when we see it happening.
Oh, I'd love to just add something to that. Well, I totally agree. 6-7 years ago, I worked for a regional government, and I was working in social care, and I developed an Agile program of work for creating a new service in 3 months, less than a quarter of the normal time it would take. And when I went to the leadership and said, okay, this is our approach, we're actually using an Agile approach for looking after people. It was like I flashed a red rag in front of a bull. They just threw their toys out the pram. They said, all our projects in IT, all our Agile projects in IT failed. You're not going to use that in social care. Go away, rethink it. So I went back, did a search and replace, took out Agile, went back, they got agreement and delivered this new service in 3 months. They couldn't actually believe that we'd used Agile successfully. But that's the kind of thing that you're up against. You get some failures somewhere and it causes some other problem. So I've seen lots of failures in IT, and it's not because of the teams, it's because of the wrapper around them. It's the organization. I worked for a charity. It was volunteering for a charity last year, and their Agile team their Scrum team was doing so well after a couple of sprints that they got told, could you go back to what you were doing before? Because you're showing the rest of the program up. Go figure.
Absolutely. And just a reminder, as we are live streaming, this is Aginext 2021. And if you want to join the conversation, hashtag Aginext, since we're talking about hashtags and cool buzzwords. Kravi, how have you found that this has changed in the global pandemic? How has Agile evolved? Has it become more mainstream because of it? Obviously, crises may have humanity innovating faster. And do you think it's going to stay?
Yeah, I guess the last year was quite the challenge, and it was the proof. And as someone was saying before, like if we think that we've been using Agile successfully because we were working on environments that were more dynamic than any others before, that now this is dynamic. Now this is real change that requires real agility. And so far, I think we've kind of, as a whole, as an industry, gotten away with lots of organizations focusing only on being agile with a capital A, and not going back to the original principles and just blindly applying, as Neil was calling the branded approaches, without considering what they're for and what we're trying to achieve. So I think right now it's the time to go back to the basics and consider, okay, why are we doing this? And now is the time to really think, okay, now this is a complex environment. Now it's the time to really apply things as they should be, and question, because that's the other thing, is that being agile, but at the same time being dogmatic about agile, is counterintuitive to the basics, right? So we should kind of challenge some things. For instance, the agile principle of face-to-face, like, okay, maybe face-to-face doesn't really mean that people have to be in the same room, and we need to think that how we can do things with this face-to-face, with like camera to camera or camera to screen or whatever. And also, as some were saying, also looking beyond the process and looking more into the organization, how the organization is structured. And that as we started having to apply Agile to bigger organizations, there was a focus on adding an additional layer just on top of what already existed. And we need to look at the organization as a whole, and instead of trying to add a layer to manage the complexity and to manage dependencies and stuff like that, considering like going back and thinking, how can we design the organization so that it's Agile by design and not Agile by process, and having more smaller units being autonomous, and removing the complexity instead of managing it.
Absolutely, yeah. I think Agile name and Agile principle, and I think it's definitely a thing still, and a tension in the industry, and especially as we go outside of IT. Yeah, there's so much to ask, but Giannis, as we're looking at a post-Agile world, or clearly nobody agreed with that title, the current Agile world that we're trying to pursue across departments, maybe, can this exist without frameworks? Can this exist without certification mills? Is that necessary for Agile, all these certifications and stuff that sometimes sponsor this conference?
I think that's a very controversial topic, right? Because there's a lot of business and money behind that. My personal opinion is that certification doesn't really matter. It's about the mindset. And what can you bring with that mindset to the company and to the business and to the teams? But as I said, that's a very controversial.
I think it is controversial, and I don't want to sort of say anything I might regret later. But I think whilst it's not sort of necessary, on one hand, it's the mindset that's more important. If you find yourself as someone sort of quite inexperienced, you do need sort of, so many job specs have a requirement of a certification, a PSM or a CSM, for example. So on one hand, you don't need the certifications to be able to do the job, but on the other hand, to get past the initial points of the job search, for example, you do. So it's a catch-22 situation.
Yeah. And it's not the first time that we've come across this, because in the project management world and in the software world, we had all of these certifications that started bubbling up. It was a fantastic industry, and the expectation is that if you've been doing X, that you should have a certification in X on your CV, even if you've got 10 years experience in doing X. if you haven't got the certification, you then need to go and do it. And it's a great money-making machine.
It is, and it becomes an exclusion mechanism, because just like a 4-year degree is not really necessary to do a lot of jobs, it's a way that people get excluded from it because they need the money to be members. But we're talking Agile HR tomorrow for that panel. There. We have some questions from the audience. Someone said, can you remove complexity? Is that the point of Agile? Is that something that is possible to be done?
Well, I think that you don't need to remove complex, like if you talk about projects which are complex or complexity in the world, Agile is not removing, right, the complexity. Agile is giving you a way to navigate the complexity. Yeah. If that was the question.
Yeah, I think that came up when I mentioned the organizational design. And I think maybe I used the term removing the complexity. Maybe it was not really the right term, and I meant more like abstracting the complexity. So right now we have an additional complexity to manage the interdependency between teams, between functions, and that's the kind of complexity that we can remove if we're able to organize a company, for instance, in a way where there are more autonomous units, more autonomous groups of people that can work together without so much need of coordination outside that group. So coordination through alignment rather than process. So yeah, not really. It doesn't remove the inherent complexity, but it removes the added complexity by abstracting some of the complexity into more autonomous and empowered groups of people.
I'd like to add to that. There's a sweet spot of where Agile works. You know, if you've got the kind of, you've got simplicity, complicated, complexity, and chaos. Complexity is where Agile lives, because it's dealing with, it's helping you lessen risk, or lower risk, dealing with uncertainty, because you're taking small incremental steps to unearth things and fail as fast as you can to learn faster. You know, we're not, if we're not talking about some business as usual activity, which is in the simple world, or in the complicated space where we see, a bridge build, traditional waterfall. I don't know if it works really well in the chaotic, because people tend to go straight back down to trying to roll up their sleeves and get simple when it comes to chaos. But certainly the complexity space is where it's good. So yeah, I think it's a superb place to start if you're working in an agile way in a really complex environment, then do that. But I also believe that we should be looking at simplifying as much as we can in our organizations so we can deal with the complex, because it gives us the bandwidth to do that. So taking the complicated, making it more simple, frees up capacity to focus on the complex.
It's the other statement you have behind you, right?
That one, yeah, I came up with a couple of years ago. Life is complex. Simplify what you can.
Yeah.
It's I back in the mid-90s, I worked in an agile team, even though we didn't have agile then. We were using design thinking. It was a UX usability specialist group. And I didn't realize it at the time, but what we were doing was simplifying the complex.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it really ties in a little bit to the other question that we had here about the frameworks, right? That's not the same as certifications. And the frameworks are kind of adding, well, complexity to the picture, right? And we can see new frameworks coming up. And I think if we talk about post-agile, probably there's going to be even more frameworks. We've seen that there's good business behind that too. Mm-hmm. So that kind of goes against that simplicity argument.
Sorry, in this point, I'm open, very, very surprised. How many frameworks do you really know?
Well, I know 4 frameworks, but I bet there are more, right?
Oh,
if we're talking about scaling,
was it right? PwC had kind of that underground map of all of the different Deloitte. Yeah. So, okay, and there was loads on there. I mean, I started life with rapid application development, which was a lightweight framework, then moved into DSDM, which is now Agile project framework. But then I did XP, RUP, Scrum when that eventually came out, and then lots of others post 2001. So I've adapted and used all sorts of things. I'm not saying anything's fantastic because it's all contextual. It depends on where, the problem that you're trying to deal with. And that's, if I get slightly irritated when I'm overhearing something that says, oh, yep, Scrum will solve this problem. And I've seen that happen where poor teams are trying to use Scrum to solve a particular problem. And then, I've gone in and just said, do you want to try this approach? Forget all of that. Just use a Kanban board and just pull the stuff in. Let me know how you get on. And then you come back in a week later, they go, oh my God, it's a revelation. I'm not saying that the Kanban is always the right approach either.
Yeah, for those that are listening or watching live or watching the recording, I just want a audible of what's happening. Well, we have on Friday a scaling panel, so I don't want to get too far into that, but I went down that road with the frameworks question. But we are having a bit of a debate in the chat simultaneously, this conversation about Almudena says frameworks and certifications are two totally different pairs of shoes. Aaron is saying frameworks should only be a suggestion. Almudena is saying, aren't frameworks a suggestion? Enrico is claiming that they're adding constraints. Then we're talking about this Deloitte tube map, which we will include in the show notes. Some people like it. It helps give context. Some people are saying, I find a lot of clients, big organizations who think the framework like even a requirement. And then I think Almudena is right. The problem is the client then, not the framework. Some of the rhetoric around different frameworks certainly doesn't help, as these are magic fixes for anything. So I'm not even going to mention a framework because I'm feeling we're really going to get into that on Friday's scaling panels. But Gwen, in your opinion, what is keeping Agile back usually, especially as Agile is not something just owned by IT anymore?
So I probably refer back to my previous answer, and I just say I probably say it's the wider organization, and it's these sort of old historic structures. So in my experience, I've seen project managers work with Scrum teams, and they take the data from the Scrum teams and they convert them into Gantt charts. So it's again, it's trying to fit Agile into a waterfall box. I think that is the biggest thing holding it back.
A comment from that this is a good follow-up, a question from the audience is that because they're often restricted by finance departments who don't know how to change project financing to support Agile, but are still compliant to auditory requirements? And this gets to this whole idea, what is post-Agile? This could be anything from DevOps to FinOps, which is about operationalizing different teams and having this ability to move teams together, things like that. Do we think it's the older structures that are holding it back? The HR department we just talked about too, requiring certifications.
Well, the finance aspect is certainly hindering the possibilities. And we certainly have a major mindset issue, right? I mean, if we go to the Agile Manifesto and read the first one, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. But many organizations, when they implement that, they take the different options as a process and they focus on that. I've seen many advertisements looking for Scrum Masters where main highlight is how much you know about Jira. So they are focusing on processes and tools rather than individuals and interactions. And the finance has a lot to do with the way we see the world. Like I said at the beginning, I'm a big fan of Lean. And in Lean, it was a turning point when they realized that inventories were not an asset, okay? Because everything you have as an inventory is not a plus. You have in an accounting system is causing you cost, actually. This is a cost. And if we don't understand the way we have to see the world and what is really value and what is waste, then a lot of things remain fixed in the past. And these are kind of things that we have when we try, you were mentioning the HR issue, but we have HR issues, we have finance issues, And like Gwen was saying, it's the rest of the organization and the different areas that still need to get into the mindset.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. And a lot of stuff is holding back, but I think all these false requirements always become. I saw Mo, you raised your hand if you would like to ask your question, Mo. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. A lot of this is false requirements and false information.
Jennifer, I'd just like to add, I think the in terms of the finance question, things that we are making moves towards being more responsive to agile ways of, to agile approaches. Things like beyond budgeting is a great step. I've seen kind of agile finance initiatives, which are also a great step, but it's also about thinking about the whole process around fun, business cases for, projects or a product, rather than a technique I started using years ago, which was creating business cases in an agile way, rather than trying to do lots, a few business cases in full and get most of them tossed out. They don't get approved, is incrementally build them and get feedback from the people who will ultimately approve them. And then the feedback is, oh, actually, we really like this, continue, or actually, this doesn't make financial sense, dump it and focus on the others. And that's actually a really good way. Then you move into how do you then fund this 15-month, 12-month initiative? Let's do it in chunks, and then assess where we're getting to and how much value we're delivering at the end of each of these chunks. And it could be we get to 80% of it and we go, do you know what, that's enough. Let's not bother with the rest, because we've delivered the value that we think we need or the customer needs. And it's using that lean approach. There's no point delivering a gold-plated service it's no point delivering a Rolls Royce if you just need a vehicle to get around in. It might be a Mini's fine.
Or go public transit, it's better for
or something like that, yes. There might be an alternative.
Mo has written his question, and I think I'm going to go with Giannis and then Kravi for these because they haven't spoken as much. But Mo wrote, how do we see the post-agile world? Is there anything in the horizon that we should be made aware of, Giannis?
I think I will go back to where I started this. I think we should be aware that there's going to be more agile after this pandemic. So everywhere, more agile. I mean, not just using the buzzword, but applying those principles from the manifesto, those, welcoming the change, delivering frequently, constant pace, working stuff, simplicity, self-organization. So I think we're going to see that more. We're also going to definitely see more frameworks, more scaling frameworks, more certifications, more business around Agile, developing with that. So yeah, I think that these are the two things I would highlight. So more Agile.
But do we think we'll lose momentum? Kravi, what do you think? Do you think we're going to lose momentum after the pressure of a pandemic is lifted or ignored?
In momentum, in which sense?
In any sense. Do you think this sudden rush to go agile is just in reaction to a crisis? And as we go back to, I do not want to use the word normal, but that's the word I'm trying to use here, that we go back and we lose this momentum and agility. Like Goldman Sachs said, this is an aberration. We need to all go back to the office as soon as possible.
I think there will be quite some trauma from all this, and I think organizations as a whole will be constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. So maybe when this crisis ends or subsides, better put it like that, we'll always be thinking, what's going to be the next crisis? And how are we prepared for that? And basically, we can't be prepared for a specific crisis. The only thing we can do is be prepared to change better and to change quicker. So going to Giannis's point, I think scalability will continue being an open question for Agile. But I would see this going back to the roots, and instead of the more recent trend of frameworks to scale existing Agile frameworks than having frameworks to apply Agile principles at scale. And again, not just through process, but through organizational design. Because right now what we have is frameworks that are so process heavy that in the world that we have right now, for instance, things that are process and ceremony heavy are a pain for people. And let's get back to the people and interactions, people, processes, and tools. And it's prone to burnout. All the ceremonies, all the like Zoom from 9 to 6, back to back. It's draining. And so that's why I think that for being prepared for a crisis like this one, for whatever the next crisis that forces us to think outside the box when it comes, I think one of those things are, how do we design the organization to respond to change rather than have like strict processes, again, as we were mentioning before, using frameworks more as suggestions. And there was the question around whether frameworks would really remove complexity. If they're used as frameworks, I think they should, because they create the common language and put enough constraints, but they should not be adding complexity.
Absolutely. And Gwen, we have a question from the audience I want to direct to you is, do you see more Agile in the near future for the corporate regulated industries or corporations?
So I can't really give a detailed answer to this, other than I've been pleasantly surprised both in the Aginext Slack channel and the Agile tour last year, and some meetups that I'm going to. There are more people working for the NHS coming along. There are more people that work, Neil's got experience in the banking industry. These more regulated industries, they seem to be sort of slowly coming out of their caves and joining the wider conversation. So I don't know if it will happen. I don't know if it can happen. I don't understand enough of what's stopping them, but there's definitely signs of it happening and of the tide turning.
I'd like to add to that. I think that the regulated industries will adapt to Agile more in the future. I think there's organizationally everywhere is going to have to embrace agility. We've seen that in the last year. Okay, it's more than just scaling. It's actually, it's Agile ways of working. It's thinking that the way that we're working is too rigid, and it's making lots of parts of in fact, all of the organization more agile and embracing agility, responding to change, because it's just part of life. We've seen it in the NHS. I work with central government clients. I've seen it there as well. So I've worked in a lot of sectors over the years, and I think they've all got similar challenges. Whatever you call it, I didn't put business agility here. I put agility because depending on what sector you're in, you need to be thinking about agility. What can we do to sense and respond to the complex? Things have changed in the last year, and we've done amazing things. I think everybody should pat themselves on the back. There's been some amazing things happen, and a lot of the things we've been trying to do for years. I mentioned before about working for Reuters in the 90s. Well, I didn't probably mention Reuters, and I probably shouldn't have. But we were working remotely in most of the time in a virtual team in an agile way, without all of these tools that we've got today. We figured it out and we did it. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's 25 years ago. So we do it. If you give people, if you empower them, it's surprising what they will do. Okay.
We have a question from the audience. If we're talking about, will we be using Scrum or extreme programming for a long time to come, or will it change? For better developers, should we leapfrog just to continuous improvement? Would we be using Scrum or extreme programming for a long time? Yeah. How should that work?
I mean, these are just options. I mean, you were before mentioning DevOps, and there, of course, there is a huge contribution from the cultural side and collaboration, and also from the tool side about building pipelines to automate deployment, testing, and so on. So Scrum doesn't say anything about that. Extreme programming has a little bit more technical focus, but I'm really looking forward for major leaps in the future, also coming from a technical side. So all the fact that we are moving into the cloud and microservices is going to empower the teams to really work with more autonomy. And the changes are going to come both ways, not just about the way of working, also the technology is going to empower people much, much more.
Mhm.
But the point is to understand the underlying principles. Sorry, because we should avoid this fixation in the frameworks or processes as this is the solution. I mean, it's just a matter of, in lean startup, you talk about product market fit. So here, maybe we need to think about problem framework or problem solution fit. And some solutions are going to work for some problems and others not, and some realities and others not. If we keep clarity of what is the purpose and the principles underneath, then we can move forward.
Mhm. Absolutely.
agree.
This is how technical debt happens, because we never ask why. And sometimes why things are chosen just because someone on the team has already paid for a certification. So to close this out, I'm going to ask each of you to describe what you think the future of Agile is in one word.
One word.
Yanis, you're off mute, so you get to go first.
Exciting.
Okay. Kravi?
I would go for distributed.
Distributed. Okay. Gwen?
Prosperous.
Nice. Neil?
Agility.
That feels like you're using the same word as the definition, but okay.
No, different, because agility is different to agile.
That sounds like a whole other talk in conversation.
It is, yes.
And Fernando, tu palabra.
Amazing.
Awesome. I'm going to go with my word, even though I was asked. From the audience, we also have Sooo says infectious. Maybe a polemic word right now, but I'm bummed. Giles says challenging. I'm going to say community. And with that, and we also have human. That is an excellent answer from Andrew. And empowering from Vera. Thank you everyone for joining. If you liked this panel, same time, same place. Tomorrow we're talking about agile people. On Friday, we're talking about scaling, which I think will probably have the most shouting, but we'll see. And also Christine Thompson, who is one of our awesome facilitators, said if you liked this, you should join in half an hour. She is running a future specting, I think is how you say it. It's always a hard word for me, agile workshop. So I hope everyone comes, brings your ideas, and has a rest of a wonderful Aginext 2021. Thank you.
Okay.